was thinking that there's different fears that people have. Some reasonable, maybe some not so much, but there's different ways that we can experience different types of fear in our life. Maybe some people are afraid of, spiders or the dark or something like that. Some of those maybe are legit, like we should fear things that are a genuine threat to us. Other times we can get a little too caught up with those in our mind. Going, of course, so much deeper, we have a lot of fears perhaps about the future, about our safety and security, maybe especially if we're going through health issues or financial struggles. We can really worry about what the future is going to look like. A lot of times we have fears of things that we just can't control and have no control over at all. For myself, I think one of the things that I really fear, honestly, is that on the day of judgment, the Lord is going to reveal to me all the many people that I've overlooked. Not necessarily intentionally, but just perhaps countless people that I, especially as a priest, as a pastor, should have reached out to, been attentive to, ministered to, and that thought just kind of gives me some fear and trembling, but I think appropriately so, because I think that uncomfortableness, for me, maybe you experience that kind of thing, should maybe wake us up more to what God is really asking of us. And I was thinking of that in a couple different ways. One, I was thinking of like after Mass when everyone sort of pours past me and I try to see everybody. Maybe when you do that, you see nobody. And there's that balance of trying to be attentive to the person in front of me, but also being like, hey, how you doing? So if you ever thought that I intentionally overlooked you, I do apologize for that. But again, more deeply, the people that the Lord has brought into my life that I really should have done more for or reached out to. But honestly, I think those situations where I was supposed to come out of myself, but I was just too wrapped up in myself and too comfortable, I guess. And that's what our readings speak of in some way. We see in our first reading from the prophet Amos, who we also heard from last week. Again, this is a time of great prosperity and wealth for Israel, but they get caught up in that and they got comfortable. And it says in our reading, they become complacent and they're just lounging around on ivory beds and drinking wine out of bowls, and not cups, bowls, and they're having just a good old time, and they're forgetting about the poor around them and their people who are struggling and being taken over, just next door. And then we have our parable of the rich man and Lazarus. Certainly, all this is a call for us, a reminder to be mindful of the poor, to share what we have. But I guess it goes a step deeper than that. That first we need to see them. First, we need to notice that they're there, the people God puts into our lives, and to not overlook them. So for the rich man, he didn't necessarily do anything bad to Lazarus. He didn't kick him. He didn't spit on him. He didn't, call him names. He just didn't do anything. And that was the thing he did wrong, the indifference. Just like he wasn't even there, even though he knew his name somehow. He was just completely indifferent because he was just caught up in his own life, in his own comfort. It says he dined sumptuously each day. Now, sometimes we have sumptuous banquets, on a holiday or a special occasion. This guy dined sumptuously every day. It was like Downton Abbey, but without the napkins. Because back then they would have wiped their hands on bread and then thrown the bread away. And those are the scraps that Lazarus would have loved to have had. But he didn't get even those. So again, for me, now maybe you're just way better people than I am and more naturally compassionate, and maybe you don't struggle with this at all, but I certainly do. And that's something I think that even though it's uncomfortable to think about and to consider, is a way that the Lord is at least calling me to ongoing conversion in my life and to be more attentive and to people, to everybody. So I think in our second reading, I think there's some helpful things there, at least for me. So we hear St. Paul's letter to Timothy, and he says, as a person of God, you should pursue righteousness, devotion, faith, love, patience, gentleness, So to pursue righteousness, which is a right relationship with God, then a right relationship, a just relationship with others. And he says to pursue devotion and faith. So our worship of God, our prayer, our relationship with God, not only should strengthen our relationship with God, but then with other people as well. Because as we grow more into knowing God's heart for us and having our heart attuned to God, we should also then know God's heart for others in that relationship. He tells Timothy to pursue charity and patience and gentleness, which I think are three things that really call us out of ourselves in order to do those, to really be attentive to the needs of the person in front of us. And he says then to lay hold of eternal life. I can think back to last week when Jesus talked about our eternal dwellings and the place of true riches, and to think about the place that we are headed, and where the place where the Lord will set all things right. And that should give a perspective on our life now. We're taking this moment to live in the future. And so all this, I think, helps us to recognize what the Lord is calling us to do, to that uncomfortable step of getting out of ourselves and looking to the needs of others. So as we encounter Christ here in the Mass today, I know for me, I'm praying for the grace of increased vision, to be able to have eyes for the people in my life. I know it can be overwhelming, especially when we think of this whole communities who are in need, this whole countries who are in need. I think we're called to do what we can and to take a step each day, knowing that here at the Mass, the Lord provides this great banquet for us, this great banquet of life, where we have a communion with Christ's offering in love for us, so that we can do the same, that we can have and live a life that's poured out for others.